Okay, next up, we are doing the innovation panel. We have Department of Finance, Baltimore City Information Technology, Comptroller Municipal Telephone Exchange, MTE, and the Mayor's Office of Sustainable Solutions, MOSS. Just like the last panel, Bob, if you could kick us off, introduce who's here from the administration. We're going to have I think each of you have a slide. Excuse me. If you could try not to spend more than 2 to 3 minutes on each of your slides. And Bob, as we discussed outside, please make sure to explain the difference between the Innovation Fund and the Innovation Team.
Sure.
And I'd also ask you, Bob, to give a history of the evolution of the Innovation Fund and how we got from where we were to where we are today. Please and thanks.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to kick this one off, we have representatives. First, we're going to have a representative from MOIT to talk about some of the services. This panel is called Innovation, so we tried to collectively pull together everybody that's involved in some way with innovation with the city. So we'll start with MOIT. We have a representative from the Comptroller, I believe, as well, to talk about MTE. We included CityStat again in this presentation. We don't need to have her go through her thing again. Right. Also asked Dan to be here from the Innovation Team, which is a grant-funded unit that you might have heard about. And then at the end, we'll talk about the Innovation Fund, which is separate, which there's a history to that, and then Shantae is leading that going forward. So
when you say CityStat here, is that Kendra or is there someone else?
No, we'd included her to be available just in case there's any questions that come up about that in general. But the work that's done on that is mostly with Dan's unit, the Innovation Team, and then the Innovation Fund, which is managed by Shantae.
Got it.
Does
Okay.
that make sense?
All right, yep.
So just make sure you understand we have a lot of people here just in case any questions come up collectively. So turn it over to Lindsay first.
Once again, I'm Lindsay Wines, Chief of Staff at the Baltimore City Office of Information Technology. Once again, Frank Johnson could not be here because he is still with the consent decree judge talking about all the technology needs there. So Councilman Costello, members of the council. Our first slide here is service number 802, administration, and this service directs all the resources needed for successful deployment of IT resources across the city. It consists of the CIO's office as well as human resources, fiscal, and contract management for the department. The increase from fiscal 2019 or for 2019 is due to the recruitment of the new CIO. And I would also like to point out that some of you may know we have released our first ever inclusive digital transformation strategic plan. We released it for public comment earlier this year, and we are about to release the final version in the next couple of days. Our next slide is service number 803, Enterprise Innovation and Application Services. This service develops, installs, maintains, and operates the computer systems and applications that help enable city agencies to effectively and efficiently manage their operations. BCIT supports both mainframe-based applications and internet-based applications that allow citizens to access information and perform transactions online. The service also supports enterprise-wide GIS. During fiscal 2019, BCIT will continue to charge agencies for agency-requested technology projects. And for fiscal 2019, we are targeting to have data available from 45 city systems available in the data's warehouse. One thing you'll see here on our outcome measure, you'll see a significant increase in the fiscal 2017 actual from 2016 for the number of new data sets made available to public on Open Baltimore. I'd just like to clarify that this is due to the inclusion of all data sets, including those that are made available by citizens. As we move forward in our development of our citywide data analytics strategy, we believe that we may need to change a number of these measures based on performance with Open Baltimore to better reflect what it is that the agency is doing. Our next slide is service number 805, Enterprise IT Delivery Services. And this service is responsible for maintaining the city's internet connectivity, CCTV technical operations, 800 megahertz safety radio infrastructure and connectivity, mainframe infrastructure, and help desk support. This service also maintains an internal service fund for hardware and software maintenance throughout the city. You can see here that this fiscal 2019 budget reflects an additional $900,000 to support the hiring of 6 additional staff and equipment to ensure the city's CAD or computer-aided dispatch system is redundant in order to eliminate outages. So those are our slides, and I have a number of staff here that are ready and available to answer any questions you may have. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Simon Error from the Department of Communication Services. The Municipal Telephone Exchange provides communications equipment and related services for all city agencies. The fiscal 2019 budget recommends 24 full-time employees, including 9 full-time operators, providing 18-hour coverage for persons wishing to contact city agencies. The service is funded by user charges through an internal service fund. In fiscal 2018, the MTE, in collaboration with BCIT, formerly MOIT, upgraded some of the city's infrastructure to support implementation of VoIP. The upgrading of the city's infrastructure is ongoing and is critical to VoIP implementation. By the end of FY18, most of the downtown offices with approximately 4,000 to 5,000 city employees will be on the new phone system. The estimated cost avoidance due to the Centrex conversion in FY18 is about $811,000. All the major call centers serving citizens, including 311, MTE, Department of Human Resources, Aging, Bureau of Revenue Collections, DPW, Constituent Services, and Medical Transportation are currently on VoIP. These upgrades have improved service performance and delivery in the city. The MTE is scheduled to continue implementation of VoIP during FY19 and will conduct ongoing physical audits of agencies that have converted to VoIP to ensure unused lines are no longer billed to the city. The cost of telephone service will increase in FY19 as a result of supporting 2 parallel systems. We still have the legacy Centrex system in place. This cost will decrease as implementation of the new system continues in FY19. The fiscal BBMR recommended budget includes $618,000 in debt service payments for VoIP implementation and funding for a VoIP engineer and a fiscal officer. I would like to conclude with a few other highlights. By running 2 power systems due to the VoIP implementation, the MTE projects a cost of $1.8 million in FY19. Now, we can bring this cost down by upgrading the network. And we are appealing that more funding should be provided to BCIT, because most of the infrastructure needs to be upgraded. So the sooner, the quicker we upgrade infrastructure, the more savings we'll realize in terms of the conversion to VoIP over IP. The upgrades that we've so far performed in FY18 by BCIT and MTE are ongoing and require more financial resources. For instance, City Hall, as you all know, and you realize on your desks you have new phones, there's still a lot of work to be done in City Hall. The telephone closets in City Hall are real old. They're not up standard. We need some ventilation to keep the equipment cooled. This needs to be upgraded. And some of the cabling in City Hall needs to be upgraded as well. Another area that we need some more upgrades is police headquarters. It's ongoing right now. We're working with the police to make sure we can bring them online. Police has about 1,100 lines. They're spending about $68,000 a month. We can reduce that cost within a few months if we can speed up with that upgrade as well. So we are appealing that more funding should be provided to BCIT to upgrade the network and infrastructure. Thank you very much.
I got you. You're on the list.
So next up, just a correction. The slide you're seeing here is the one from the prior presentation. This is an error, but ask Dan to be here. He's the chief of the innovation team to talk about his unit, which is in the mayor's office budget.
All right.
Sorry about that. We can send the correction afterward. And just a clarification, the innovation team is funded under mayoralty. It's activity 18. There's a line called innovation. That's his team. Sorry about that.
So yeah, Dan Heimowitz from the Mayor's Office of Innovation. So we're a new unit within the Mayor's Office funded through a grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies. It's for $1.35 million over the course of 3 years. It started last year. The way the office is meant to work is that we focus on a single big city issue that the mayor defines as a really important thing for us to work on. And the first issue that the mayor has tasked us with working on is supporting improvements to recruitment and hiring at the Baltimore Police Department. So that's what we've been focused on and are continuing to focus on for the time being.
And then last item under this panel, I'll kick it off and then ask Shantae to add a few words. The Innovation Fund, there's a separate agency or agency in the book called Innovation Fund. The recommended budget for fiscal 19 is $279,000. That money is going towards business process improvement, what we used to call the Lean program, and all those functions are being managed by the mayor's office. Just a little bit of a history of the fund. Over many years, going back to fiscal 12, we have given loans to city agencies to do projects that would either bring in more revenue or reduce ongoing operating costs. And those are all listed in the agency detail on volume 2, starting on page 109. And happy to answer any questions about those as they come up. The function has moved to the mayor's office, and Shantae can talk a little bit about what the plans are going forward.
Hello, my name is Shantae Eldridge. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations under the Mayor's Office.
Can you hang on 1 second?
Sure.
Quick pause. Last slide, flip it over. They included I'm sorry, ma'am.
Oh, not a problem.
Please continue.
Again, my name is Shantae Eldridge. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations under the Mayor. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the two parts of the Innovation Fund. The one part, as Bob just talked about, really relates to how we are funding different departments to do innovative things. Bob is obviously in his shop running the fiscal side of that, and I'll be working with him to run the programmatic side, working with the departments, giving them some insight on how they could be more innovative and finding different creative ways where they could actually, again, have operations that bring in revenue or decrease the expense on the general fund side. The other side of the fund is the lean government, which you may recall from several years ago, where we were actually training city employees to remove waste from their operations. We have now revamped a little bit. I've actually trained some of the people who are in this room. Instead of relying on a consultant, we're now having 9 city employees trained to teach business process reengineering, where we'll be training from boots on the street all the way up to executives on various topics, such as how to map a business process, how to figure out if there is waste in their agencies, and other instances where they could actually just be more efficient as employees. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. That's it? Cell phones. Who's in charge of that? Municipal Telephone Exchange?
I didn't get your question, I'm sorry.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
I didn't
what's
get
your
your
name?
question. Simon Eder.
Simon what?
Eder.
Etta? Okay. All right, so you're in charge of cell phones, right, for city employees?
That's correct.
How many city-issued cell phones exist? Just a round number within like
About
500 or
900.
1,000?
900,
900 total?
correct.
Throughout the entire city?
Probably, let me say, probably 9 something with Verizon. We have 3 carriers.
Wait, hang on one second. Bob, how many employees do we have in the city?
So we have about 13,000 positions. At any given time, we have about 11 to 12,000 people on the payroll.
Okay.
We have a lot of devices that we manage besides cell phones.
Right.
City employees have modems. We have devices to manage smart meters, water meters, currently ongoing project. Cell phones, I would say, I'm not quite sure, but I could get you exact numbers. It'll be between 900 and 1,000, I believe.
And those are all with Verizon Wireless?
90%, yes. with
What are the
Verizon.
other 10% with?
Sprint and AT&T.
How come?
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. The reason is, it never used to be like that. A couple of years ago, it was kind of evenly distributed. Over the years, we had issues with the network as far as Sprint and AT&T was concerned in the city. Verizon invested a lot in the city and boosted up more antennas, so reception was a lot better, and they offered us some good packages as well. We've been working with Sprint lately. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago whereby they have a package that we're looking at, and we're hoping, and they're also trying to introduce push-to-talk. We lost Sprint a lot when Nextel, when the breakaway with Nextel and push-to-talk radios were no longer used.
Doesn't it make sense to use just one provider?
Well, we would like to see some competition, yeah.
Well, yeah, I know there's several providers, so you negotiate and leverage them to compete with each other to give the city the best possible deal, right?
That's correct.
So wouldn't it make sense to just use the one provider that provides the city the best possible deal?
Most of the providers, we buy off various state contracts. For instance, it's a GSA contract and a NASPO contract. And sometimes the providers will be offered a certain dollar amount. And when they come to negotiate with the city, they may not offer us everything. So it's just the best value.
What percentage of those 900 cell phones have unlimited minutes and data?
We have mostly shared plans. With the new contracts which are being introduced, there'll be unlimited data. Hopefully by the end of this month, we're looking at a NASPO contract that Verizon has introduced. It has unlimited data, and the cost is going to go down. We'll probably be saving about $10.
How much is it currently?
Currently, it's about $48, and it will be probably about $38.
So everyone currently has unlimited voice and unlimited data, right?
Unlimited data, not voice. The voice, we have shared plans, about 400 minutes for the most part.
And what happens when a cell phone's decommissioned?
When the cell phones get decommissioned,
For example, let me give you an example. Kelly, who's a fictional character, works in the mayor's office, and Kelly is relieved of her duty or decides she's going to move to a different place and she resigns from her position. What happens to Kelly's cell phone?
we do ask the agencies to return the phones to MTE. Sometimes they don't. They hold on to the cell phones in the event they have a new employee, and so they don't have to purchase another phone.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. No, I'll leave that for you. I didn't mean to not trying to single out the mayor's office. Let's say Department of General Services, where Kelly's boyfriend Jack works. So, Jack, Kelly's boyfriend John, I'm sorry, works at Department of General Services. His name is John Old. Anyway, so what happens to that cell phone? Is it on MTE to have that cell phone returned, or is it on the mayor's office or Department of General Services, in whichever case, whatever the agency is?
We do request the agencies to return the funds to MTE. Sometimes we get the phones are broken and we send it to a recycle provider. We also have a provider that we've been working with, and they get the phones tested, and sometimes they issue the city a check.
So sometimes you don't get the phones. Why is that?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you.
Huh?
I didn't.
Sometimes you don't get the phones back, you said.
Sometimes we don't get the phones back.
Why is that?
The agencies keep the phones. When we request why not, they say they want to keep the phones. In the event a new employee comes in, they don't have to purchase a new phone.
So the agency's doing what they want?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the estimated cost to the city of the agencies doing what they want?
Well, the phones often are bought by the agencies.
Or what?
They're purchased by the agencies. It comes off the agency's budget. So they have more control over the phones.
So how many cellular plans do you think exist that are currently connected and being paid for by the city, but are not in the hands of an existing employee in good standing of the city?
I'm about to get the general inspector back in here. That's still in from the city.
I'm not sure. I might have to get you that answer. I have to do some research and get that answer to you.
Have we conducted an audit of that recently? Have we?
No.
I suspect that we're wasting in excess of 5 figures a month on wasted cell phone plans.
The iPads and everything else.
Yeah, I didn't even talk about the iPads or the tablets or anything like that. So who are we gonna charge with looking into that?
I will look into that and report to you.
Okay. What do you propose as next steps to look into that?
I think I already look at. Let me take some time to look at that, and I'll
Okay.
provide you a proposal.
So request number 14 is a, are we gonna have 14 or 13? Request 14, no, 15, sorry, 15. Request 15 is gonna be a narrative explaining how, what your plan is to investigate any cell phone plans that are in excess of what the city currently needs and what the cost savings associated with those are.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Councilman Schleifer.
Just before I leave, Mr. Chairman, I just got some numbers in.
That was quick.
For the wireless devices, there are 3,298 wireless devices.
3,000?
3,298.
That includes like tablets and.
Exactly, yeah, modems and all that stuff. But I could get you an exact number of how many cell phones we have.
Jack, you want to do VoIP? Mr. President?
Yeah, I know we are doing voice over IP. Where are we with that in terms of have it been fully implemented yet?
No, Mr. President. As I mentioned during my presentation, so far we have, by the end of this fiscal year, we'll probably have implemented between 4,000 to 5,000 VoIP lines. The goal is to complete implementation by the end of FY19.
That
Calendar year.
it takes that long?
It was a 3-year implementation based on network readiness. And we stress that the network has to be ready. If the network was fully ready from day one, this implementation would have taken probably a year. But the network is not ready. We have, I mentioned earlier, the police headquarters. Right now, we're working with BCIT to have the headquarters upgraded. The technology in there is antiquated. We cannot put VoIP in there if it's not quite ready. And they have to purchase some core switches. It's going to cost them about $50,000. They're dragging their feet, but they're spending $68,000 a month on Centrex. So we got to do something.
Okay. Is it going to cost us any extra money for this 3-year period, or does the 3-year period, the money that we already allocated, is the money for the 3-year period? No extra cost coming behind that?
Hopefully, it will not cost us any extra money. We have come up to speed whereby we doing some of the implementation in-house on the smaller sites. We've done most of the major locations except the police headquarters.
So what we need to do to expedite getting voice over IP in all the agencies, what would it take?
It will take allocating some resources to upgrade the network to BCIT. We need switches in some areas. We need cabling, PO switches. We need core switches coming into the buildings. Fiber in some locations. We need full redundancy. We're lucky that we're running what we call a private cloud. The city owns the system, and the private cloud is fully redundant. Tier points and every woman. We have 2 data centers. Just in case one of the data centers goes down, we're still up and running. But we need redundancy in some locations. For instance, we have fiber coming to City Hall, just one path, and the fiber goes down, we're down. So we need to build a robust network, and it's going to need some funding, something we haven't done in this city for a very long time.
So whose responsibility is that?
The network is BCIT.
CIT?
Correct.
Okay. It's going to take y'all that long to get all of this together, because by the time 3 years come, the voice over IP might be something else.
True. We actually have a number of items in our CIP, including the replacement of the network switches and upgrading the infrastructure for this project. It came down again to funding. We weren't funded for it until the CIP this year.
I'm done.
Councilwoman Clark.
I can't believe that.
I apologize that I came in a couple minutes late and it was fatal, because I'm not sure exactly how all these different organizations fit together. And I would like to kind of hear that. It sounds as if the two ends of the bookcase do fit together in a significant way that if I would like to have explained. I mean, I call it MOIT, but it's BCOIT.
BCIT.
BCOIT?
Yes, ma'am.
What is
BCIT.
BCIT? BCIT. And you're the controller's office here?
Telephone exchange, correct.
Okay, the telephone exchange. And somehow, y'all need to get together, and I would like to hear about that, but I do have one question while the innovation maven is here. Have you figured out I'm not being facetious.
Yes.
Have
you make a very good point. There's a lot of
can't
collaboration.
remember what it was, but
There's a lot of collaboration between the two offices.
yes, and I think
Basically, the telephone exchange is basically your telephone company in the city. We manage the voice aspect of the network. BCIT can speak for itself, but they mostly manage your data, your computer network, your LAN, your local area network, what ties everything together.
they'll only give me 2 questions. So here are my 2 questions.
Correct.
can I ask, this is my first question, can I ask BCIT and the telephone exchange to explain together to us their relationship, which seems to be developing? My second question is, what do we know so far about what it takes to recruit, and I'm presuming retain, police officers for the Baltimore City Police Department? It's more than a passing fancy, as you know. Those are my two questions, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask for answers.
The floor is yours. You can. Yes.
Okay, I'll start. So in terms of our relationship, we work very closely with MT and the Comptroller's office. We provide technical support for the VoIP system. We provide installation of the network switches, the actual infrastructure. Simon's group actually manages the phone system. So that's kind of the delineation between the two.
The ones that we call all the time to connect with people, right?
Correct.
It's wonderful. But that's...
So that's high level. We're kind of the people behind the scenes making sure that they have the infrastructure in place in order to deploy the phone systems that they need.
Okay. And then, what are you all doing on your own right now? What are you
Specifically in relation to the VoIP project?
No,
or just in general?
Yeah.
We do all sorts of things. I mean, we do everything from, supporting...
Everything that we know what you're doing. Okay.
Yeah, we really...
I just wanted to see the connection.
Yeah, operationally, we have not changed from when we were known as MOIT.
Gotcha. Can you tell us where you are with your research and innovation? Because I think it's really important.
Sure. Yeah. So just a bit about the process first. So we've looked at a bunch of different things, including the quantitative data related to the police department's hiring. We've also done a lot of qualitative research, which has involved engaging the community in various ways through workshops, through interviews, and likewise with current BPD officers. And what we've tried to understand is a few different things, including what are the traits that the community is looking for in the next generation of BPD officers, as well as what are the traits that current officers feel are essential to being a great Baltimore police officer, as well as what motivated you to apply and what do you love about this job. So from that, I think there's a lot of really important findings. So first of all, Councilwoman, just to speak back to your other question. Attrition has been relatively constant for the last 5 years and even longer than that at the BPD. What has really changed has been a drop in the number of applications. So it is about recruitment and hiring if we're talking about more and
so more than
local officers.
retention.
More, yeah, precisely. Yeah, if you're talking about really bolstering the numbers and of officers of the department. So what we heard is there's actually a lot of overlap in terms of what community and what officers are actually highlighting as key traits in police officers. Honesty and integrity as number one. Commitment to the community and to service, number two. And number three, interpersonal skills were something that both officers and the community highlighted as really important things. And then there were separate things that community highlighted and that officers highlighted as really critical. In terms of how do we attract more officers and especially more local officers, I think there's a lot of different prongs that we're now working on testing some different approaches on. I think for one thing, there's a need to start attracting youth at an earlier stage. So that gets back to the police cadet program, which was brought back last year. Need to expand that, I think, and improve that in a number of ways. I think there's the need for much more systematic, targeted outreach and marketing within the city to potential candidates. And we're also looking at some interesting new collaborations with community groups in terms of sourcing potential applicants nominated and brought forth by the community.
I see. Thank you very much. So you're still working it out.
Yeah, so the research is now completed, but yes, that's correct. We're now working to test out some different approaches with the department.
I think it's very relevant, and then I'll stop talking. I read a lot lately about how in choosing a new police commissioner, it's very, very important. And there are community leaders in my district that are actually taking some leadership locally. Very important to have community input into the qualities that the city, the real people of the city are looking for in a new police commissioner. Sounds as if you've already done a lot of work with the police and the community about, especially the police department now, about what virtues, what qualities they hold up as why they were attracted. Sounds to me as if that's a sort of a way for the mayor and her people to begin to approach opening it up. I got the impression that's what's going to happen. And hearing from the general public about the leadership of the department now. You may have some good insights and experience already that would help sort of format input like that, listening meetings like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. Those are the traits that have sort of surfaced through this research, I think, are really useful and applicable when thinking about a range of positions throughout the department, including at the top.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My pleasure, Councilwoman. Councilman Schleifer, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
You good? Jack, you good? I'm gonna get next. Councilman Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chief of Staff, this is a question actually for you, and this is an issue that's always important to me. I think I want to go to Service 805, IT Delivery Services. So, for example, since we start with CAD, since we mentioned CAD, we know that recently our CAD system was hacked, and this is something that I talk about every year. I don't think the city spends enough money to make ourselves safer from cyber attacks, and I don't see any increase in the budget this year for that. And I don't understand how, when we know that our systems have been very vulnerable, for us to not have 911 for almost an entire weekend, not have the CAD system up because it was attacked. Where do you think that we're falling short on cybersecurity for the city, and where should we be going? How much more do we need to invest to make sure? Because when you think about all the documentation and all the things that are available through our system, all the people that pay their bills, their taxes, their water bill, their parking tickets, all of those kind of things that will be available if we are breached, and then think about what that will cost us on the back end when people start suing us because we didn't protect their information. And we know the city of Baltimore doesn't go to court. We are going to settle because that's what we're in the business of doing. What could we spend on the front end? My guess is that would be a lot smaller amount. What could we be doing, and what are other cities spending? How much are they spending on their IT security?
So in terms of cybersecurity, a lot of that information in terms of what other jurisdictions are spending is not publicly out there because jurisdictions don't like to kind of say what we are or aren't spending on cybersecurity. I will actually let Ms. Gail Guilford, our CISO, speak more to that, but just in terms of high level, that's one of the areas that we are looking at in terms of our overall strategic plan. We know we need more. We're actually actively recruiting for a cybersecurity position right now, but I will let Ms. Guilford speak to, as the expert, on what specifically she thinks it is that we need.
My name's Gail Guilford. And
Miss Gail, they probably can't see you on TV because you come around.
I don't want to be seen.
You're used
Remember,
to it,
she's
man.
cyber. She stays hidden.
Welcome back.
Hi. A couple of things. We have made some progress, but not enough. We continue to beg and plead. We have a $1.5 million estimated grant from Homeland Security that is confidential, and I cannot discuss the details of it. We also have a partnership with the multi-state ISAC, which provides daily monitoring. We're doing the best we can. We are hiring 3 new people this year. I did get the staffing. I did get the $500,000 from finance last year. We're in the process of purchasing advanced threat protection. That is actually in procurement and will be ready for bids to be accepted on the 15th of June. We also beg. We won 2 grants last year from the Office of Emergency Management through the UASI program. And those of you who are not familiar, it's the urban security area group of the federal government that gives money, which has been cut by the Trump administration. We have put in for 3 grants this year. I can say that averagely we are understaffed, number one, and number two, on an average, you're looking at about $2 million a year with those municipalities that are willing to discuss how much they spend. And I'd also like to officially correct something. You said we were hacked with 911 this year. No 911 calls were ever not answered. Number two, due to the partnerships that we have in place, again, I'm begging, with the FBI, U.S. CERT, and Department of Homeland Security, we were able to mitigate it once we determined that one of our doors had been accidentally left open, and we worked a lot in the forensics piece of it. So I can say our partnerships save us every day. We did average 56,000 attempts in less than a 3-hour period trying to get into the open port that we allowed via human error. I can honestly tell you that the IT3, which is the agency that you report cybersecurity incidents to, has had 1,420,555 total complaints since 2013 to the cost of $5.52 billion in assets. You are quite correct. We are going to get sued. We need cybersecurity insurance, which also comes under risk management. But I need some help, and I need some money. But I am grateful for the $500,000 I got last year, okay? Any other questions on cyber?
Councilman?
Yeah, that's my only questions about that, Mr. Chair. But if you have a follow-up, go ahead.
If you had to prioritize the outstanding needs, what is the most dire need right now in terms of cybersecurity that's not being funded?
That's not being funded? Data protection. We are funded for DDoS, which is a whole bunch of people coming at you one time bombarding to steal passwords. The $500,000 is going to advanced threat protection, and our audit, both audits, said that we did need data loss protection. I don't have the money for that at this time. And some automation, a lot of what we're doing is actually manual. And today, believe it or not, it's being done by 3 people, 2 of my engineers and myself. The 3 of us, 24/7, 365.
What the data loss protection? What's the price tag associated with that?
That ranges anywhere from $750,000 to about $900,000, depending on the complexity of it. And we would also need to upgrade our firewall systems, which have been in place for 7 years.
And the cost of upgrading the firewall systems
It could be part of that 900.
would be part of it, and that's
Yes.
a one-time cost?
That would be the one-time cost. I'm not 100% sure on what the ongoing monthly cost is, but Martin, we pay $150 now, don't we? We do. Yes.
Microphone, sir.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, my name is Martin Okumu, Director of Enterprise Infrastructure for BCIT. Yes, we do pay, so right now about $150, and then capital will be the lift to bring it up to the current level, and then pay the operational recurring cost, which we don't have the numbers right now.
Yes.
So wait, I'm confused. You pay $150 for what?
The existing firewalls that are in place today that are 7 years old.
You pay $150 a year for those?
Yes, sir.
$150K.
Yes, sir.
And this would be a capital cost of 750 to 900K with a continuation of 150K per year.
A little bit more than the 150 a year.
Yeah, so what we're looking to do is a refresh of the system. So to bring it up to date, there's a capital investment, and then we'll reevaluate the new operational cost, that would look like once we bring in the new system. So
Okay.
this is just the current running operational costs.
So just to summarize, you currently pay 150K a year in O&M, and you need 750K to 900K capital investment.
Yes.
What would the operations and maintenance be after the 750 to 900K capital investment?
It's gonna be it's dependent on the modules we are gonna be running. So I don't have the number. Once you procure, then you work on the operational cost. So I don't have the number right now.
And
Is
we've
it
only,
close to 150K?
it's going to be more. We've only financed the pieces that we knew we could get, and we've only determined the total cost, because depending on which system is used for advanced threat protection, then that gives you this layer here, then the next layer is the upgrade of the firewalls and the implementation of the data loss protection.
And
How soon can you get a figure on what the annual cost would be, the annual increase?
so we can run the numbers and then get back to you probably in a few weeks here, because we still have to identify the correct solution.
A few weeks isn't going to cut it. How about
Okay.
tomorrow?
We'll work on it.
We'll
for you.
work on
We'll
getting
get
that
I don't mean to be
information.
rude.
Ballpark figure
I don't mean to be
tomorrow.
rude, but
We'll get you a ballpark.
yeah, I think a ballpark figure would be very helpful.
Sure.
And thank you for your support.
Mr. Chair, and this is, Ms. Gale, please be seated. Just, Mr. Chair, if we could enter this in as a request, just so that we can see it in data form, if we can actually have you guys send to the committee the number of attempted attacks on the city government in the last year, and where in the city government, to where in our IT infrastructure those attacks were made. I think that would be greatly appreciative. My second question, Madam Chief of Staff, would actually probably best answered by you. As you know, as someone who spends a lot of time talking to you guys about open data, I think it's a great thing, and I'm glad to see that it's a priority for Mr. Johnson, and that we finally have someone whose chief job is to deal with data, and she's wonderful and great. But I also wanted to ask you guys a similar question, even though I know the answer to you guys, especially around data, is yes. But are you guys expanding your ways of looking at the way that you do your business through equity beyond the open data stuff? Is there other ways that you're looking at how you disperse your services throughout the city through a lens of equity? I know the answer for the open data thing is yes, but for everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to kind of bigger picture of everything that we're going to be doing, that's one of the reasons why we put out the strategic plan, because we know we need to change our business model overall. There's a lot of, the strategic plan is like the 50,000-foot view of everything that we want to do over the next 5 years, and then within that we're going to have kind of our detailed implementation strategic plan, including data and civic analytics. Fiber communications is another area that we're going to be working on. So yeah, we are looking at changing how we do all of what it is that we do, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Councilman, did you have a request in there? I didn't get that at the beginning.
Oh, yes. I asked, the request was for them to send over, like over the last few fiscal years, each year, the number of attempted cyber attacks on us and where they went in the city's IT infrastructure.
So we had two things. I had 16, which was you're going to get me a quote for what the annual cost of data loss protection is going to be, which includes the upgrades of the firewalls, right? That was 16. One second. Okay, and then 17 was Councilman Scott, and that was threat analysis over the past 3 years, 2 years, past 3 years. Okay. Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to talk about the Innovation Fund a bit. So the budget what is it? I think it said $279,000, which is the total in the innovation fund. $279,973. That's the total, and that is simply like rolled over funds that are returns on investments that have been made through this. I mean, how's that?
No, so the way it's worked, the 279 is for the ongoing lean management, the business process improvement. The innovation fund itself,
What does that mean?
I'm sorry?
It's the, sorry.
Well, there's ongoing business process improvement, which is managed by Shantae's operation, and that's budgeted. That's what's there with the 279. There's also the fund itself. We, for years, made general fund contributions to start the fund, to start giving loans. We're at the point now where, I mean, we've been doing this for 5, going on 6 years, and some of those loans have now paid back. So we had determined over the last couple, and we were getting to this point, is that we don't think we'll need to make additional general fund contributions, that we'll use proceeds from the loans that are paid back to spearhead new projects as we see them come in as agencies apply for them.
So, I mean, so I'm trying to understand, like, where is that money that any city agency or any city employee, because, you know, I would love for us to be encouraging city employees to be thinking about big ideas and ways that we can do things better, more creatively, generate revenue as a city through operations, or cut costs as a city. Where is that pool of money sitting that we're going, hey, if you work for Baltimore city government, think big, and here's a pool of money so we can help realize these ideas that you're coming up with?
Yeah, so what we had done traditionally was we open that up as part of the budget process, where agencies can ask for application, they can apply to get a loan for the innovation fund, and that's the piece that Shantae is working on re-energizing. She can maybe speak to how that will go.
Correct. So the one thing that we are doing is we are actually doing exactly what you said. We're, I guess you want to call them innovative coaches. So we'll be going out to different departments, encouraging them and educating them on what innovation is, because innovation is just a word. We have to kind of sometimes define what it is. And so encouraging people and letting them know different ways that they can be innovative, either also partnering with BCIT and different technology solutions. And then again, as Bob said, it would be an application process, because again, you can't fund everybody. So it would be a weighted process where does it relate to the community? Does it basically one of the mayor's pillars? Are you working with another agency to be collaborative?
Yeah, but I'm still struggling to understand where that money is. Like, where does it sit? Like, where you're saying that there are loans that are being repaid. I don't see where that money is, so I don't know how much money is being repaid this year to know how much you have. So, for all I know, you could have $10,000 coming in this year, or you could have $2 million coming in this year. I have no idea how much money I can go out and ask city employees to be looking to spend.
Right. So we have, if you look at the history of the projects in the book, there are six projects that have fully repaid what they were originally loaned, totaling about $2.3 million. Now, we also have outstanding 6 loans, most of which were in the past few years, where agencies are starting to repay those. So we don't know if we'll get fully repaid. We expect to be repaid for most of them. So at a very minimum, we have a balance of about $2.3 million that can be used to give additional loans. The reason we don't show that here is this is the additional contribution into the fund. So that money is sitting in a special fund. It's called the Innovation Fund, but we don't need.
Is that shown in the budget books anywhere?
It's not shown in the budget books, because the budget is how much you're contributing out of current revenues into the fund, and we don't need to put additional general funds, we believe, into the fund, because we've built up that balance.
But you have this $2.3 million you're talking about. Where is that accounted for in the budget?
It's not in the budget. It's in our balance sheet, our accounting statements.
But okay, I have a budget book here that shows revenues and expenditures.
Right. We're not making additional contributions into the fund. We have a balance. There's balances in a lot of accounts throughout the city. We don't show those in the budget. We're showing that we don't need to contribute any more money from the general fund to do loans. We can pull from that balance. And I'm telling you, that balance is about, by our estimation, about $2.3 million from those projects over years that have paid back into the fund. So that's why we reduced the contribution over time. We don't need to make additional general fund contributions. It's a revolving loan fund.
And did anybody apply for new projects in FY18?
No, the function's not with us, it's with Shantae now, so
Do
they're
we have any new
managing the
projects in
application.
2018?
So not in the last fiscal year, but this starting in the fall is when, again, we had to wait for enough money to be repaid back to actually loan back out. So starting this fall, we are actually going to open back up the application process.
Okay, I think that's my questions. Thank you.
Councilwoman Middleton.
My question is for the Department of Communications Services. So bullet 3, where you talk about your major call centers and serving citizens, and then you make a statement, these upgrades have improved service performance and delivery. And I want to specifically ask about aging. I serve on for the council president on the Commission of Aging. And do you have data to back up that statement that the call center for aging has had improved performance and delivery? Because we had a heavy conversation at the last commission meeting about that service, specifically about the phone service. So I'd like to know how, you know, do you have data to back up your statement for the aging call center?
Yes, ma'am, we do have data. One of the benefits of the new system is that each call center has reports, and the reports help us to measure performance. How many calls are coming in, average speed of answer, how many calls are abandoned, longest calls, and all of that. In the past, with the legacy systems in the city, we did not have these reports. The call centers now do have those reports. The supervisors are being trained as we speak to analyze, read those reports, and to enable them to do staffing and also to measure their performance. So we do have that ongoing. And I think we just have to, in terms of aging, we can pull some reports for you and share that information as to the number of calls they're receiving. What we realized, and this is going to help not only aging but most of the call centers, it's inadequate staffing. Calls come in, and in queue, nobody answers the calls, and that's quite a problem. But there's going to be some improvement.
We would definitely like that information, and I say that because our conversation during the commission meeting was, I mean, it had gotten to the point where we were talking about how we could be trained as commissioners and volunteer to be in the call center because it seems to be a problem with the health department.
And just to add to that, another good thing with the new system, you can be in your office and take those calls. You don't necessarily have to be in that call center. There's a lot of flexibility.
Thank you.
So we can set you up as an agent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Pinkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for Ms. Wines. Service number 802 makes, a recommendation to upgrade the salary for the executive director at about $90,000. Can you tell me what is the current salary for that position? And does someone at that, in that position, are they required to live in the city?
I believe the position is currently $250,000, and yes, is required to live in the city.
And so the recommendation is to take it to 340?
No, this captures the salary increase from the fiscal 2018 budget. The 2018 budget was lower, so this captures the cost of the existing salary.
So it was 160, and now it's up to
Correct.
250. And so it has to be 250,000 for us to get a qualified person in that position?
That is not my place to discuss. That was a decision made by
Like
the
that's
mayor.
like one of the highest paid positions in the city, right? Huh. Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, traditionally, from my understanding, is CIOs across make between $300,000 to $400,000, but I can't speak to that. That was not my decision.
Got you.
Did somebody want to speak to it? No, I'm just saying this. We have to raise it to 250,000. What you're saying is that it has to be 250,000 to be competitive to fill that position.
That was the thinking.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to know. It didn't have in the budget book any reference. It just said upgrade $90,000. So I just wanted to know what we're upgrading it from. Man. Yeah, we may. I don't know if on the council if we made very wise decisions on our selection of positions. Good gracious. I had one other question, and this was in reference to at an earlier panel. I made mention to Cable and Communications about the franchise fee and how it's going into the general fund, but there's not any specific percentage of the money that's dedicated to broadband or Wi-Fi. But I noticed in the Inclusive Digital Transformation Strategic Plan, it prioritizes providing Wi-Fi and broadband to pretty much all the citizens of Baltimore, but specifically in impoverished areas. Where have we started talking about where the resources will come from? Are we identifying how those will be funded? I'm of the opinion that franchise fee, well, too late to negotiate, but would have been a good opportunity to try to get resources along that line. But I guess that has already left the station.
Yeah, I can't speak to the franchise fee, but what I can tell you is we are actually, and we kick it off on Friday, we have a consultant coming on board to help us write a fiber communications broadband strategy. They're going to look at everything from infrastructure to existing policies and looking at other models across the country for how the city can utilize existing broadband and expand broadband across the entire city. So that is something that we are working on right now, and you all as council members will be reached out to by this consultant as stakeholders in this process.
And so will that consultation also include potential funding recommendations on how to? Okay, thank you.
Councilman Schleifer.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Hamowitz. I know you had mentioned that the one thing you're looking at for the mayor, the priority is about police recruitment. And so I was just wondering if we can get like a quick update on that, being that in this year's budget we have an increase of 100 positions in BPD, which is a pretty hefty goal of amount of positions to fill based on previous year's recruitment and everything. And piggybacking off of Councilman Scott's talking about the equity lens that we look at, have you found that there's maybe any ethnicities, races, religions that are being excluded from BPD's recruitment process?
So I'll start with the second question. There's no one being excluded from the process. However, I do think there's room for better, outreach, as far as the recruitment process goes, as opposed to the hiring or selection process, to make sure we're attracting lots and even more great candidates. And I think that can help bring in more diversity into the department. So but there's nothing that's excluding anyone from the process. So just to answer that, can I just ask, just to clarify on the first question, you wanted sort of a status update on just in general the recruitment picture at BPD, or? Yeah,
like how with some of the efforts and that you'll be doing, how are we going to be able to reach a goal of, let's say, 100 new people coming in this year's budget? Like how are we going to fill those positions that we're funding?
So we're focused right now on, I'd say there's a recruitment piece of this and a hiring optimization piece. Maybe I'll start with the latter, because that's where we've worked a lot so far to date. The BPD process, there's lots of room for improved efficiency and also for a better experience for the candidates, so that we don't lose candidates who should be making it through, who might choose to take another job somewhere else. So some of the things we've worked on and are working on are a case management system that BPD is using to manage candidates coming into the process. That means a more efficient process. We're about to launch, BPD is about to launch for the first time an online application, which for the first time is going to allow candidates to apply online rather than having to physically come into BPD. So that's about to launch. I think that's both good for the hiring process and good for the candidate and should open up a wider set of potential candidates. I think there's more room for sort of better customer friendliness and during the process as well, which I think can also be helpful in terms of getting people through. That's the hiring component of it. In terms of outreach or recruitment, I think there's a lot that is being done, but a lot more that can and should be done. I spoke earlier about the need for sort of a future pipeline, which is, I think, the cadet program, and how do we start to fill more positions there. I think that's one piece that's starting to happen. I do think there's a need for more targeted smart marketing towards potential applicants here in Baltimore City, and that's something that we're exploring right now and going to begin to test soon. As I said, I think there's a huge amount in terms of smart partnerships with a range of local organizations, whether that's sororities at local universities or community groups that themselves can be sourcing and bringing forward candidates, and that's what we're looking at. What are the most high value in terms of bringing forward great candidates? What are the most impactful partnerships? And that's what we're sort of testing out right now.
Right, so from what you've currently seen, is it realistic to expect that we're going to be able to hire an additional 100 people and get them through the process in fiscal year 19?
Right now, we're focused on filling all the current vacancies at the department, and that's where we're really focusing our effort with BPD.
Could I just clarify that? I want to be clear that we talked about this in the overview. We don't expect to be able to fill all those positions.
Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob. Can you start over?
I just want to clarify that, that was a budget adjustment. We want to be able to fill those positions eventually because of the reduction on overtime, but we don't expect to be able to fill all those at once. We think that the work that the innovation team is doing will improve the process and help us kind of turn in the right direction. But I just want to be clear, there was no expectation that we'd be able to do that all in 1 year.
So just there is no reasonable expectation that all 100 of those positions will be filled this year, correct? Okay. Councilman, I'm sorry.
Gotcha. And how many open positions are there currently?
There's currently 98 vacancies.
90.
98.
98.
The last I checked, that was mine.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, you talk about recruitment and you talk about cadet program, which is great. But Coppin State has a degree program for criminal justice majors. Have we tried to partner with Coppin State University to try to see how many of those criminal justice majors are interested in being police officers?
I know the police department, Council President, does do recruitment there. I think to your point, I think there's room for and a need for consistent follow-up and engagement with those very promising potential groups of candidates, and I think that's where there's room. I think so they do go to events and engage with that program. I know, but I think it's the follow-up and the continued courtship that I think could be really.
Because a couple of years ago, when I caught on to it, the police department were mailing, invitations to join the police department to all of the county high schools. And I asked why it wasn't done in Baltimore City public schools. And it was something that the school system really wouldn't give them access to those students, but now I think they do. So if you could check through your innovation, however, or Kendra can look into it to see if the police department is still trying to recruit our high school seniors. Because they were doing it in the county, and they was doing it for a long while. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just to take a pause, we're at 4:11 p.m. This panel is going to finish by 4:30, at which time we have DOT. They're starting to form outside. We're going to go to Councilman Schleifer, and then we have council members Henry and Scott.
So just a follow-up question on that, because I was just looking back at something that was sent to me. Is it possible that people are being turned away from BPD recruiting based on their religious beliefs and not being able to get off for the specific religious holidays or restricted days?
I don't believe that is the case. I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. No.
Okay. No, because I mean, somebody had sent me something on that, so I was just looking through it to find what the original message was. Basically, they had said they would try to go through and become a police officer, but based on their religious beliefs and the accommodations that would be necessary to fulfill the role as well as also be a member of BPD, they were basically told that they can't actually go through the academy and become a police officer. So I was just wondering if you had come across that, or if that's something that possibly we can look into a little bit more.
It's not something I encountered or was aware of, but I'd be glad to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Henry.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back really quickly to the increase of the CIO's salary that you were talking about earlier, because I heard someone say, "Oh, hey, okay, there's somebody on the other side of the podium. Cool." Somebody said that 250,000 was the average amount for a CIO, and what I was trying to check in on is that a CIO in general, like across the private sector, or is that specifically a CIO for a municipality? Because that just, I mean, 200 is, I don't think there's anybody who gets that much, a salary that large right now. Maybe does the state's attorney get 250?
That would be the closest, but I don't
know the exact, but the state's attorney is over 200,000 for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact amount.
And I think the health commissioner is over 200, but not 250, and the police commissioner is a little over was like just over 200,000, and I mean, police commissioner. I mean, that's like that may be the worst job we have, and we only pay them 200,000. So 250 seems like an awful lot of money to pay for the person who's running some of the tech, because that's the other issue. Is it's not even like everything's directly under this person yet, is it? Or is that going to be one of the things that's changing?
That's going to be one of the things that's changing.
So basically, we're paying this person to go fight with the agency heads to take their tech away from them. Is that what the bonus is for?
We're not fighting. We're working collaboratively. No.
And I want to be very clear. I'm supportive of that. It has frustrated me for years that individual agencies can't communicate with each other because they have their own IT fiefdom. So I'm totally on board with the idea of one entity being in control of that. I'm just a little surprised that in a city where we are constantly told how much money we don't have to pay for other necessities, that seems like an awful lot. And I mean, it's just like, if we're going to pay everybody what they need to be getting paid, we should be paying everybody what they need to be getting paid. If we're competing with the private sector. I'm just throwing that out there.
I think we can follow up. I don't know benchmarking that number that you heard, if it's private versus public, but I think we could probably check with HR and IT to see what how that was
the city
arrived at.
solicitor is the managing partner of a 100+ attorney firm, and I don't think that what we pay our city solicitor is anywhere close to market rate for that in the legal community. So I think there's an expectation. I know everybody up here is told that we're compensated at the level we're compensated because we chose public service, and we're evidently okay with that. But is that not true on the other side of the table?
Well, I think for IT in particular, again, we'll find out what the benchmark is. I mean, from what I've heard or what I've seen, that could be low for what other CIOs are paid. So it might be well below what the market is, even for a public sector IT manager. So I think we just have to go back and check what the benchmark is, what the right number is.
I would love to see that other 600,000 person cities that struggle with the tax base like we do are paying their CIOs a cool $250,000 or more. Okay, thank you.
And before Councilman Burnett's question, and I'm coming to you, Councilman Scott, I think that, I mean, even if it happened last year, when we're talking about upgrading a position by about $90,000, we shouldn't be looking for an answer. I mean, we should already, we should have a quick response to the constituents of why we justified a $90,000 increase. That's not small potatoes. I mean, and I'm quite sure there are a lot of people listening, and watching tonight going, what? We didn't know that. And so as a city, with all of these competing interests, when we make that kind of decision, that's a significant decision. We should have an answer immediately to why we decided to, raise somebody's salary by almost $100,000. Councilmember Burnett.
Just as an immediate follow-up, and I'm not sure if this is a question for you or HR, but are salary studies done? I know in several fields, they look at other jurisdictions within the field, other companies, if it's the private sector, to pretty much have a low and a high on each position and what that should be paid, sort of a market study for salaries. I'm not sure if that's the exact term, but I know that those things do occur. Is this something that we do, not necessarily just on this specific position, but for positions overall, to my colleague's question about people being paid competitively, and then also within the context of public service?
So I think it's a good question when HR comes here, for sure. I know they do periodically do salary studies. Sometimes it might be a request from an agency specifically for one particular class of employees that they go and they do a study and compare. And then, we have to meet to discuss if that's worth the investment, if it's something that's worth it for the city to do. I think in this particular case, the city has a desperate need for better IT. I can't speak to the decision to bring that person in at that salary. I wasn't involved in it, but clearly there was a judgment made that we needed to pay somebody very competitive salary in order to do all that we're asking that department to do and all the needs.
Thank you.
So we have 10 more minutes until our next panel. Councilman Scott.
I promise not to take all 10 minutes, sir. Just to follow up, and thank you for your work that you're doing, especially around police recruiting. And as you know, myself and my colleagues fought very hard to have that cadet program brought back last year. I want to ask you a question about an idea that we have that we think that will help bolster that. So for me, I said oftentimes the only way we're truly going to deal with the issue of not just of recruiting, but of having a homegrown police department is if that we're cultivating that all the way through, right? So we have this youth program that we have with the Explorers, and then in my mind, we should be feeding those young people into the cadet program, but there needs to be something in between there, right? I think that, for example, we have all these great trade and vocational schools in the city of Baltimore. Mervo just happens to be my favorite because I went there, and it's also the most applied to high school in the city of Baltimore. It's the largest high school in the city of Baltimore. Anybody need any more facts? But we also, at that school, it actually has a pre-law track. And what my suggestion has been is for us to actually have a track inside of those schools like Mervo, like Carver, like Edmondson, to have a track that leads directly from that high school when they're graduating. Even if we're only producing 30 or 40 graduates a year, we know that we're going to be in need of hiring that many cadets for in a few years to hire that many police officers. That, to me, would seem to be a way that we could grow from within. And we can do the same thing with the fire department. They actually do have a smaller one right now at Vivian T. Thomas High School. Actually, one of my mentees, she's graduating this year, and she can immediately go into the fire academy as a fire cadet after graduating high school. To me, that seems to be a simple way for us to do it. It's all about partnership. We know we have these young people who are self-identifying their interest in law enforcement as young as they can in the Explorers program. We were losing them because we had gotten rid of the cadet program, but we also need to invest in something there so that we're not having these conversations about, they actually told us that they still have 120-something vacancies before the committee a few weeks ago. And we know that we're not going to hire for those 100 positions because we can't hire the positions that we have now. We can't hire for the salary-safe positions that we've already used for overtime. But if we were home growing our police department through a partnership with all our agencies and especially with our schools, I think that we would have a greater impact. I just wanted to see your thoughts on how we would go about creating a program like that. And they used to have something like that at Walbrook, but when you talk to the folks from the department who were around back then, they said it was never properly staffed and never really invested in. And truth be told, for those of us who were around then, the fact that they put it at Walbrook shows that there wasn't the investment made that needed to be made, because it was just a place where, unfortunately, we just put kids that no one liked. Now we have to make that investment so that young people, no matter where they go to school or where they want to go to school here in Baltimore, should have that opportunity.
Yeah, no, it is a really powerful potential pathway into the department. So, yes, there is, engagement with the high school, these high school programs where, where there's a link between that and a sort of interest in that kind of profession, and that engagement happens. I do think it could be more, again, continuous and sort of relentless from a recruitment perspective. In addition to that, one thing we're looking at is building out the current cadet program as into sort of a wider apprenticeship model, which would sort of tie into that sort of high school link and give students a chance to have more exposure to the actual job, to the actual experience of being in the department before sort of entering the cadet program. So it is something we're looking at, still exploring it. I don't want to say it's happening, but something that I think there's a lot of potential around. And again, with the cadet program in place, I think there's room to do that, basically, because again, the job, essentially the paid position is there. It's a matter of how do you give them that exposure. So I think that's something that I think we can work on.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested in talking to you about it, because I've literally talked to gentlemen in the police department who actually used to, quote unquote, teach as a police officer at Walbrook. So to trying to bring that back and make it in a more innovative and effective way, I think would be great. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Colleagues, anyone else? Okay, thank you all very much. Bob and company will be back here in 5.5 minutes.
Chief Technology Officer's salary range. So for this type of position, the range